Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you for joining us on a Wednesday afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. We have a fantastic program lined up for you. We're going to talk with two fantastic ladies that are the backbone of a women's literary collective here in Charlottesville, Virginia. They got a grant from the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation, and they're applying this grant to building a community here in Charlottesville that it's leaving its footprint in a better spot than when it first arrived. And I'm excited to spotlight this women's literary collective on the program. First, let's thank a couple of the sponsors that make the program possible. We're an advertising agency here at VMV Brands, and we love to work with a lot of great clients. One of them is Interstate Pest and Service Companies. This business started in 1969 with the first generation, Mr. Wells. He used his personal truck and a goal to build a company. Today, Interstate Pest and Service Companies is 4 generations of family and almost 100 employees, a Commonwealth-wide footprint, started here in Charlottesville in 1969. Dr. Scott Wagner, another client we love to spotlight. Scott Wagner, chiropractic and sports medicine. This gentleman, through chiropractic care, physical therapy, and sports medicine, is making the quality of life for so many people better across Charlottesville and Central Virginia. And for that, we salute him. Judah Wickhauer, if you could, let's go to the studio camera and let's welcome Vivian to the program. Vivian, thank you kindly for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
I'm excited to spotlight the organization, and Diane Townes is on set as well. Diane, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. Vivian, we will start with you. Give us the birth story of your life, if you may. Who Vivian is, the person.
So I was born at University of Virginia, in fact.
Okay.
In the hospital there. I grew up in southern Albemarle County, Esmont, Virginia. And I graduated, and then I went away and worked for years in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area. But I'd always had a yearning to come back home. And when I finally got an opportunity to come back for good, I did move back home a couple of times, but I came back for good in 2017. And I felt Charlottesville was a place that I could come and build something to nurture my passion. And my passion is literature. And so I was delighted when this grant was announced by the CACF, Charlottesville Area Community Foundation. I applied for the grant and to answer the points of increasing more awareness, history telling, and education. And so that's what the Literary Collective of Black Women does.
You have always been inspired and motivated and moved by literature.
Yes.
Your entire life.
My entire life.
Why did you see Charlottesville, specifically Charlottesville, as a good birthplace for this collective?
Because having grown up in this area, I'm very familiar with the socioeconomic and the racial tensions in this city. So I had always felt, it always seems to be like just underneath the surface, there's a lot of racism. You don't always see it. People are really friendly down here because everybody, they speak. People are really courteous on the roads, but still there's this weird dynamic between the race, when it comes to race and the construct of race here. So I also participated for a little while in a Mindful on Race group. So it's something that's always been, front and center of my mind, knowing how it also affects women around me on their jobs. People have had horrible stories of things that has happened to them on their jobs, and they felt powerless or feel powerless to do anything about it because they're afraid they may lose their jobs. And it's a weird space to navigate when you're a black woman, not just a black woman, but we're speaking in terms of the collective, when you're in a workplace where all the powers around you are white. And so I saw Charlottesville as a good place to grow something from within for black women, so that we could come together and share our stories, come together and tell each other what things we're dealing with, and not just at work, but in our everyday lives, at restaurants. We've shared many stories about discriminatory treatment that black women have received. And so I felt there was like a hunger for something like this from the women I had spoken about this. And it's proven to be true because everyone is so involved with this literary collective of Black women, everyone that has become a part of it. There are 12 women that answered my call to participate. I sent it to like almost 100 people. 24 actually answered, but 12 have gone through the beginning all the way to, we're 9 months in now, and it's a year-long project. So I'm really excited that we were able to do this in Charlottesville because I think there was a need for this.
I totally agree, and that's what I want to pursue with this interview and that show. And this show is how your collective and your literary group is taking perspectives and topics and stories from the past, talking about them in the present, and applying the elements of what you've learned and discussed to the future.
Yes.
In Charlottesville. I'm very excited about that. Why don't we welcome Diane to the show? Diane is a part of the group as well. We're going to tie this to Charlottesville here very soon. Diane, who are you? Passions, hobbies, and interests. Your birth story, please.
Oh, I was born right in the middle and heart of Charlottesville, between downtown Charlottesville and the University of Virginia. And I grew up on the 10th and Page neighborhood. And fast forward, I was a young kid in Drury Brown's job program, which was amazing to me because that was the first time I got to work around the University of Virginia to learn a little bit about the campus and to see what it was like to work for the library system and Upward Bound and places like that. So from that experience, I later went to Virginia Union University and studied in humanitarian studies, and then later the University of Virginia, where I earned a master's degree in education. And once I found that the university, from a college point of view, I kind of thought it was, I liked it very well, but I thought it was a little different, as Vivian said, from a jobs point of view, it was a little bit difficult and not very inclusive. But my passion is history and science. And going back to when I grew up here, we would have field trips and things like that when the schools could afford to send kids to Monticello and places and Washington, D.C. And the thing that made an impression on me the most was going to Monticello and not hearing anything about the plantation story. It was just swept under the carpet, and it just made me very confused. I thought, well, I heard something about these enslaved people, but it doesn't seem that, they're talking about it at all here. So I walked away really dismayed and sort of disheartened, and I thought it was a fairy tale. I thought it was make-believe. I didn't know if this was true or, because no one wanted to talk about it. There was a shame factor. So that's been my passion ever since, and I try to apply the sciences. I love geophysics and the natural planetary sciences, so I try to make history and science become a cross-disciplinary approach where when we were growing up, we would hear news anchors say things like, in history, that's the way it is. It was very definitive, and that was the story in case closed. But I kind of felt that I didn't want to buy into that. I wanted to treat it as if though it was a vast universe waiting to be discovered, and that stories were continuously unfolding. And I didn't want to learn just about dates and eras and timelines. I wanted to apply real people and the stories behind the people and work on with the community on trying to interview people just as you're doing and having them tell their story. So that's pretty much it.
I love it. I love that answer. So this is what we'd like to do. And we'd like to spotlight first the literary collective of Black women in Charlottesville. We have Vivian, the founder, on set. We have Diane, a key member, on set as well. We'd also like to take it then a step further and analyze and discuss how the literary collective of Black women is positively impacting the Charlottesville ecosystem through what's being discussed in the group. So first, why don't we take the collective in totality? How does membership work? How do you choose the titles of the book you read? How, as as members that want to be challenged with your intellect and what you're reading, how do you find titles that are more applicable to 2019 versus, say, some that you said were originated around Civil War times? You mentioned to me off air. All those topics to you.
Okay. Well, the first thing I think you wanted to talk about is how
How we get involved.
how we get involved with the collective. So, first of all, this is a year-long project. It's funded for 1 year, and membership at this point is kind of closed as far as being a member. However, it's a broad scope of women. Like I said, it's 12 women, and so I know that it's been very important to these women about what they're taking back into the community. For example, we have a person in the group who is an educator. She works in nonprofit, educational equity for national organization, and she was floored to find out that she didn't even know. For example, one of the books we read is called "A Forgotten Sisterhood: Pioneering Black Women Education." If you could pass me that one.
Sure.
It's a long
This
time.
one right here?
Yep. This book. It's called "Pioneering Black Women Educators and Activists in the Jim Crow South: A Forgotten Sisterhood." The fact that she's so passionate about education, she was really beside herself that she had never heard about any of the 4 women discussed in this book. And these women built schools at the tail end of slavery, they built schools for black children who didn't have anywhere to go to school, so they created something out of nothing. So she's taking these ideas and applying them at her nonprofit where she's working, to make sure some of these stories get into the classrooms for black children, not just black children, but for all children to know there's a much fuller and a much more exciting American story than what we've been told. And so that's what I would say about as far as getting involved. Whereas I don't expect the project to go past a year, but who knows, maybe it will. But in the current way it is, we don't see it going past a year. But we have made ties between myself and these women that are never going to go away. Out of this collective, we've become friends, we've become comforters, we've become like sisters. And so that affects each woman's own family and community. Sure. And so in that regard, it definitely has a positive effect in the community.
The collective and the impact it's having in Charlottesville. Diane, I'm going to throw this to you. 10th and Page, the neighborhood you grew up in, has come a long way. A long way. I was talking about this week with someone on the show that also grew up in the neighborhood. You look at, you know what, who I was talking about, it was my buddy Clarence, and he said he grew up there in the early 90s, and he said in the early and mid 90s, it was unsafe. You had folks, hustling and stealing and dealing drugs, and now the neighborhood is, a lack of better phrase, it's been gentrified completely through the increase in real estate taxes in Charlottesville, doing a disservice to the neighborhood and the folks that made up the neighborhood, right? And now you go down 10th and Page, and it has a completely different look. The collective and the ideas that you're talking about, and then apply it to Charlottesville now. Because I agree with what you said. For so long in this community, and I've been here 19 years, for 2000, there has been this underlying racial tension that was ignored for the sake of keeping Charlottesville the happiest city in America, or the best place to live. It was trying to keep the USA Today and the Huffington Post to say this is Mayberry.
Yeah.
And that created smoke and mirrors that disguised what was reality. Anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, I was just listening to Vivian talk about the city of Charlottesville and the dialogue on race. I was a lead facilitator during that initiative, and I was a little bit concerned about it because I felt that the same types of people were coming. We were just preaching to the choir, and we still need to do more. I think it's a work in progress, and it will continue to be a work in progress. But I feel that from that, it opened up dialogue with the University of Virginia and the satellite communities around Charlottesville. And we've done other projects related to history and making people feel a little more inclusive and talking about unity and things like that. But we still have, I think, massive work to go. Yes,
ways to go.
Yes. And one of the things I met Vivian at a forum. It was happenstance. I wasn't in the group. I actually ran into her, and she told me what she was doing. I said, "Oh, history. I'm doing that too." And I think each of us, we have taken some manner of the arts and trying to work with the community as much as we can, have people feel included, whether it's a forum or whether I interview them on the radio or whether I interview them in a studio or whether Vivian talks about the collective through this play that we're doing. I really feel that I identify with it because it's a way to reflect and heal. It's not, like I say, going to stop. Hopefully we'll be able to continue this process, but we have a lot of work to do, and I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing, working with the community and working with the Memorial to Enslaved Laborers and including students in that process and having them say, how do you want this statue to look, given that we've had all of this fuss about the Lee statue. What do you think maybe in the next 7 years this statue is going to convey to the community? So I worked with about 200 some students on that project. And so all of this ties in with, I believe, what we're doing with what we're doing inside and outside of the community, within the community of the collective and the larger community. I think, I see a lot more work that needs to be done.
What do you think, Vivian?
I'm going to repeat your question.
What do you think
About?
of what we're talking about
Oh,
here?
yeah. Definitely, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done in Charlottesville. And I really, back in August of 2017, August 11th and 12th, I was actually on vacation in Martha's Vineyard, I think, and it was surreal to see Charlottesville on CNN. But I said to my children, we were there together, unfortunately, I kind of wasn't surprised because I felt for a number of years that Charlottesville, there's something like just brimming right under the surface, and you analyze it very well, but that it was ripe, that had to be ripe before something like that would happen. It could not have happened in Washington, D.C. Something like that could not have happened in any given number of cities. But for the people who plot and plan to have this, to know we can do this in Charlottesville, that itself is very telling. And I think leading maybe up to this happening, a lot of people did have very unpleasant experiences in their day-to-day lives as Black people here in Charlottesville. And I think it's very sad that something like this, and I'm sure this has probably been said over and over again, it's sad that something of this magnitude had to happen before we're really talking, comfortably talking about this problem of discrimination, racial discrimination, difference of treatment, to be honest, even of our little Black boys. There's a different way, even at their early education years, that they are treated in the classroom. I know of several friends whose grandchildren, one friend of mine had a set of twin grandchildren. One was a boy, one's a girl. When he was in preschool, the boy ended up getting kicked out of preschool, and I've heard this story over and over because it's been said that they are aggressive, displaying aggressive behavior. Just because a child comes from a family that's, Black people tend to really be expressive in how we talk and how we, the way we just communicate with each other is different. That comes across in the classroom with our children, our boys, as that they're being aggressive. So those are the conversations that have come about in this collective based on the readings we've done. We've talked about maybe we should somehow join together, and some of the people with the expertise in the group can start to have parenting classes for Black mothers and black fathers. So through the collective, there's a lot of other things running through it that have come up based on our readings that we want to do. I really want to, one of the things that has always been really dear to my heart, even way back when I was in college years ago, is the absence of black folk from literary and from history books, the absence in the literature that we read. And even at the point of when I was in college at American University in DC, that was one of the final papers I wrote, was the absence of myself in everything I'd read, and that this was a college classroom. So I feel like that's one of the reasons that this collective was so important to me, is maybe this is a way we can plant a seed here in Charlottesville and from this, we can fight together to change, to make the curriculum more inclusive. I know it's a whole process. I've really been discouraged, and I've been told what goes into this whole thing of writing of curriculum. So it's at a really high level, but it's time that all of our children, again, not just African American children, white children, every kind of, wherever you're from, every American child needs to know this rich history about black people. All people have taught kids is that they were slaves. And then no one wants to talk about the slave experience. But we were not just slaves, we were whole people with whole lives. And that's a miracle in itself, that we were able to carve these lives out of a system such as slavery.
You mentioned it's not just missing, it's strategically leaving out of black men and women in history books.
Yes.
And the impact this is going to have on the next generation and generations to come, because we're essentially in our school systems providing textbooks that are saying this is how it was, when it really wasn't actual reality, which is then reinforcing this in the minds of impressionable youth,
yes,
who then grow up with this mindset, thinking of it as fact, which is wrong. I will bring it to Charlottesville. There was at a time in our city where half the population was African American. Now it's roughly 18%. Mm-hmm. There was a time in our city where there were businesses in Charlottesville that were proudly owned by African Americans. Now, from a restaurant standpoint, I can think of Mel's.
Yep.
I can think of Brown's on going down Avon.
Yep.
And I can think of, is it Royalty Eats?
I'm not sure.
On the restaurant on Cherry. Is the only black-owned restaurants in Charlottesville.
Right.
And that is just boggles my mind and shows me that we're nowhere near where we need to be. So I love how you're taking from a macro concept, we are being left out of literature.
Absolutely.
And discussing it, because right now in Charlottesville 2019, 42%, a recent survey earlier this year, 42% of African Americans did not feel comfortable or welcome on the downtown mall. And I can tell you why that is because there's no go-to safe
Nope.
spots on the downtown mall, whether it's
That's
a
right.
club or a music venue or a restaurant, where you're just like, all right,
Exactly.
I mean,
this is relaxed, this is
And
home.
quite frankly, everything reflects the white power structure here. Even the clothes. I mean, I love Stonefield because I got Trader Joe's over there. And so, it's because we had Trader Joe's up in Maryland and stuff for years. So I love Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
I love Stonefield. It's just really nice. But I'm like, I'm sorry. There are not even clothes. I mean, there's a monopoly even on the types of vendors, if you will, that
Absolutely.
are allowed to even come to Charlottesville.
Because those are they're
there's
the
not-
ones that
there's
can
those
unfortunately
shops.
afford the rates,
Right.
the rents.
I can't afford those clothes. So, I mean, it's in the fabric of everything. And I think my opinion is that it needs to start in the classroom as early as possible. We can work on what has happened by educating people. But so much has happened, like you said, Vinegar Hill was leveled. I mean, people were essentially just bulldozed out of their own
Their homes
their
and their
communities,
businesses.
And their communities were leveled.
Right, all the important aspects to creating generational
Yeah.
wealth.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like if we can get started with preschool as early as that, to have equitable African American history in the classroom from day one, because now we have to seek out, for example, I have a granddaughter, she'll turn 4 in October. So I went looking for a nice little book for her. I'm, explaining God in relation to a little girl, and this cute little girl with cornrows on the front. And then I'm reading, and I'm looking further and further in, and I'm like, wait, who is this white guy? Mm-hmm. God. So I can't give that to my granddaughter. So, but that's supposed to be acceptable to me, because why would I have a problem with that? You understand so it's just in everything.
Systematic.
It's systematic, yeah. And again, I don't see any other good way, based on the women, for example, who made schools and taught children everything they needed to know to navigate a post-slavery society. I think we have to start in the classrooms, or having someone even mention in the group that that's not realistic. So maybe we would make our own classroom somewhere in the community, do something. But all children need to, what child would not be excited to read about, for example, Harriet Tubman? This short little petite woman, she was like 4'11", and she freed thousands. She had a gun on her side.
Yeah.
Her hymnal in her other hand.
Right.
At all times. Mm-hmm. And fearlessly went.
She was an escape artist. She was adventurous. She had vision.
Yes. So
courage.
She may have made the history books by now, because the popular people, you just keep replaying them over and over.
Yeah.
So many more. But however.
It's so easy to build a
Exactly.
storyline and a brand in a movie and a book around Harriet Tubman.
Yes.
It's so easy.
It's so easy.
Right.
Exactly.
Escape artist, courage, vision, fearless.
Yeah.
What child wouldn't want to?
What child wouldn't want to do that?
Movie,
Yeah.
right?
Every kid wants to know something about that.
Right.
That's the kind of stories we've been reading. This, in the kind of books and things we've been reading, and so this is another analysis that came to me when I was in college years ago. Think about this table, and this table is Charlottesville. Uh-huh. This is the grounds of Charlottesville.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Yes. So I'm getting fired up now.
I can tell. I like it. Bring it. Bring that heat.
So, one of my professors, I love language. That's another thing about why I love literature so much. There was a word she used called lacunae. It's spelled Lacune.
Okay.
And lacunae essentially means holes, omissions. So imagine this is Charlottesville, and there are holes here, holes there. You got to be careful where you walk, because you may fall in a hole.
Yeah.
Holes all over the streets and the grounds in Charlottesville. And you know what's in those holes? It's African American stories, literature, history, abundance. That's what I feel like, and that's what I said. Even at college level, I was absent. Those stories are absent. It's up to people who know better, people like me, like Diane, like the other women in the collective, to go find these books and bring them, and find these stories and find these films and bring them to the people. And again, not only for our black children. I keep saying that because sometimes I fear that's what perhaps our white sisters and brothers think. It's like, why does anybody, we don't want these stories told. But why? This is another level. Not all, yeah. But this is another level. This is for all of our children. We talk about how successful other school systems, like the Chinese school system, the educational system I've heard is like amazing. And I'm like, we will never have this, because we need to come together first before we can make that happen. For one thing, you're leaving all these stories of America out. Mm-hmm. I don't see that ever happening without us getting past this point.
They are American stories.
Yeah.
They really are very much. And I would say for Black History Month, it's Black Empowerment Month, because American history and Black history, they are one and the same.
Yeah, they should be.
And and I think what you were saying, I'd like to say that yes, the classroom for me, I felt that the classroom was cut off from real world experiences, and I would like to see students now, especially with the historical sites doing so much to restructure a lot of the damage that was done, and it's not this definitive history where Thomas Jefferson and whomever else, they never told a lie, they baked a cherry pie, and all of these things that canonize these people that were very human. Now, students can go to these salon talks, and that's one of my passions. I like to go to learn about indigenous peoples, other people. We don't know anything about other people still, and everything is just not black and white. There are people who have shared stories that are just very common, just like you and I. If I'm hungry, then I'm going to feel that hungry, you're going to feel it. It may not be a war bomb coming in my backyard, but if I'm hungry in Mississippi, Virginia, or wherever here in this country, I'm still going to feel hunger, or being out on the street under a bridge, panhandling because I don't have a roof over my head. So those things are very real. All of those commonalities, and our kids a lot of time are not really being able to relate to that because the classroom is not making that real world connection to the grander spectrum, the larger world.
This hits close to home. We talk about this all the time on the show. So we try to use this platform to discuss topics that otherwise were awkward or difficult to discuss. And I feel like if we have topics and we discuss, the best of Charlottesville, Virginia has to include equality for everyone in Charlottesville, Virginia. So that's why we talk about it. And folks come to me, they're like, man, these are the topics that everybody's thinking about, but is hesitant to talk about in public. And I'm glad that you're doing it. So another topic I want to bring up and cover is we look at the history of schools in Charlottesville, Virginia, and let's just take over the last 30 years. We have an advanced placement program that was put into place in Charlottesville school system in a lot of ways to keep white families from leaving the Charlottesville school system to go to, say, a county school system or a private school system. One of the reasons over half of the property in the city of Charlottesville is zoned R1 for single-family detached homes was to keep folks from leaving in the 80s to the county for bigger pieces of land where they could build their McMansions. So here's where I'm going with this is the systematic oppression I think is very strongly rooted in the school system, and that we have an advanced placement program that was put into place to keep white families in the school district. Okay, and the numbers justify that. So how do we get, with Charlottesville, in schools in general, how do we get the literature changed or the curriculum changed or the summer reading list changed? Where if you're saying that's the starting point, how do we get to the starting point?
It's not going to be easy because I've actually written a letter to the governor with all of our names on it about this curriculum situation, and that's been probably 8 months ago. Did you get a response? I got no response. I called to the office as well. I was told that there's a person who is the diversity and equity person somewhere in the Charlottesville and Albemarle counties are supposed to have one. But I also talked with another person who's quite well-versed in all things Charlottesville and involved with the school system. And she said to me, it was disheartening, but she said, that's not going to happen. You know, this change it goes all the way to the Board of Education. And so it's not likely to happen. And that some of the black children themselves they're not interested. And I said to her, but how are you not going to be interested in something that you don't even know is not there? And children don't need to be responsible for their own, someone that is invested in children. All children need to make these decisions. But she was just giving me some information and saying that, with this there's a whole new, not new anymore, but there's a system that you must go through to get something even approved as curriculum. And then there comes the question, who's going to write it? So before they even accept something, it's all like really lofty information that she gave me. So one of our members, again, I had mentioned this earlier, said it's not going to happen. And quite frankly, she also says too, and then you have to be careful because you never know who will want to, access this history and make it something else, or How will they present it in the class? How will they want it presented to the children?
Revise it.
So she suggested that we start like we start in many other things in our communities, maybe through churches, through making the connections on that level first. But I'm still not totally persuaded that this cannot happen. And the reason why I'm not is because of the women that we've met in these books, that even me now, I'm looking and thinking, how did they do this?
They found a way to get it done. They're
a way.
inspiring you.
They found a way, and that's inspiring me. I refuse to just hear, well, it's not going to happen. I don't believe that. Because you know what? It's the right thing to happen. And eventually, I think we have to have that belief in something that's correct and right for all eventually will come to pass.
Let's thank some of the folks that are watching. Trista, is it Feggans?
Yes.
She says, I'm watching. You're doing a great job right now.
Oh.
You're getting love from Carol Patterson, proudly watching. Nana Apai, am I saying that right?
Yes.
Lovely, great work. Good job, Vivian. Samuel Tuckham.
Yep.
Great job, ladies. Keep up the good work. Leontini Claypack, your sister is here. The collective is powerful and healing. Sister Stars, you look beautiful. Give it a like and a share on any of the streams. We'll relay any positive commentary. Paul Johnson, very well said, Vivian. I miss you very much.
Oh, that's so nice.
Ashir Samara, mother-in-law, we had a deep conversation about that incident. I wasn't surprised at all. If you have any perspective you'd like to relay to the ladies, put it in the comment section and I'll pass it along. Throw it to you. You said you grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. Mm-hmm. You grew up in 10th and Page. 10th and Page is in the heart of the city. You've known Charlottesville for many decades. That's safe to say, right? Is Charlottesville in 2019 a better place than when you were a child growing up in 10th and Page?
Yes, it is. I
Yeah.
think it is. I think in many ways it is. At one point in time, people couldn't even walk over to Belmont. That was just the forbidden zone. Like the Planet of the Apes, you can't go into the forbidden zone.
How was that forbidden?
I don't know. We were
Was it just understood?
It was just I was a bit young, yeah. But we came in to the era when the Paramount started to. We were still sitting upstairs, but some of the Jim Crow signs were coming down because I could remember downtown, the post office was where the library is now. And I remember seeing colored and white on the fountain, but it was torn off, pulled it off. So we were coming in as children, not really understanding the full impact of that. But we knew that because of the fact that we had the bird's eye view from the balcony at the Paramount, that we were segregated and we had to sit separately. And sometimes our parents were very overprotective. So living so close to the University of Virginia and being born in the University of Virginia Hospital, like Vivian said, I didn't know anything about the campus. I was just right down the street from the campus. And I was big enough to ride the bicycle with a group of girls over there. And that's how I found out about the University of Virginia campus. I rode down McCormick Road, and I said, oh, this is beautiful. I'm going to go to school here one day. And didn't have a clue as to what I was saying because I didn't know that only primarily white males could go to school. No one told me. Our parents were so overprotective. I mean, other than that bicycle ride and Drury Brown's job program, I probably say we were very sheltered because people were afraid for us. And we had no clue how probably hostile it was. And I do remember a little bit about Woolworth and the lunch counters downtown because, of course, downtown had traffic. It wasn't
pedestrian.
Walled off or closed off
Right.
until probably 73. They were mirroring the Boston Mall in Boston, Massachusetts. So I would say that, yes, it's changed because we are not as, and I never really had that attitude anyway, and nobody ever told me I couldn't go, so why not? And then we were the children of, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. So that empowerment and Nina Simone and all of that music, we felt empowerment through music, not so much, we weren't getting it through literature, but we were getting it through the arts, through the music. So I think that helped us to get through. I recall going back to the classroom, they're taking us to this plant called Comdial. And we were supposed to say, see, you can get an assembly line job here, which is great. It's nothing wrong with a good blue-collar job, but I never really felt that what does this mean? Why are we getting out of school? And what do these phones and wires mean to me? Well, it's a day out of class, but it meant nothing. I couldn't go on with that. So I just think that was the closest that we were ever given to trying to do a few field trips. They stopped those, by the way, by 8th grade because the school budget started
What
to
school did you go
tighten.
to?
Oh gosh, I went to good old Mr. Lane and Walker. I loved Walker, and I went to Jefferson, and then McGuffey for 1 year, McGuffey Arts Center.
Sure.
So we were the cargo. We were the all 6th grade class that made desegregation happened. So we were the kids that went to, in '66, that went to Jefferson School. And so that will be part of the museum story that we are all telling now at the Jefferson School, that we'll talk about that material. And I call us a little cargo because that's how we were treated. It was so distracting because they were so pressed for now scrambling after about 10 years later, after massive and passive resistance. Now we were made to okay, it's 10 or 12 years later, we've got to make this happen by law. So we were little kids that were but we weren't the test case kids, but we were the kids that did not get the lights, camera, and action on us, but we were in the middle of the storm, and we always felt that. So is it better? Yeah, but like I said earlier, we have a long way to go. We have much work to be done. And like the character that I'm reading in the play, Rachel Bagby, I think this collective is wonderful in that we are doing exercises and readings that help us to connect with our ancestors. And we talk about that. We talk about being one with the environment and respecting our world and the environment around us, and being able to combine with that, and that our ancestors are as close to us if we tap into it, to it as our blood and our liver and our jugular vein. That's the kind of thing that I would like for young people to be able to. It's like therapy. It's like, I always say cathartic, and it's probably an overused word, but it is. It's like therapy to understand. And I would like younger people to be able to experience that cathartic feeling. And that, one of the forums that I held, it was probably about 10 years ago, I did the Marines of Montfort Point, the Black Marines. No, I'm not a warmonger, but my uncle was on the front page on a bicycle, and he was in one of the islands on the Pacific. And I would like to be able to say, you have heroes in your family, whether they cooked in the kitchen, whether they went out and did landscaping work, whatever capacity they serve in, university grounds, you have heroes in your family, and you are somebody, and you do connect with that history. And I feel that, I know that this literature that we've been studying and talking about, like we're little kids at Christmas, will mean something.
That's true.
Yeah, will mean something to children. I do feel that way.
I think it will.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you guys are doing, because you're talking about topics that have to be front and center in the discussion for things to progress in the direction they need to progress. The talk, I think, is probably the first stage of the execution. One of the things that we talk about a lot on the program is the uncomfortable aspects of Charlottesville's history, and how, without question, there were things that's happened in the community that you look back on and say, this is just wrong. What needs to be done? How do we remedy this? How do we fix this? 1965, Vinegar Hill is destroyed. Almost 200 families are displaced. Their homes and their businesses are destroyed. And then folks are moved from where Staples and the Shebeen are now, Staples office supply and the Shebeen restaurant, to the West Haven public housing complex.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm just think about it like today's term. My home and my business are the two, along with my wife, the two top assets in my retirement and my how I'm trying to grow my life. And if we're taking away the homes for 158 families and businesses and a church and destroying the neighborhood and then saying live in public housing, of course this is going to set back the African American community in
Absolutely.
Charlottesville. Do you bring up the topic of Vinegar Hill? I mean, your thoughts on this topic in general, Vivian?
Yes. My thoughts are that, and it is for you to articulate it the way you have, I feel this way about it. Remember, this happened, I know it was in the 60s, which was, I mean, historically recent, if you think it in terms of the history of this country. But that shows that we were still not seen as well as people, not
As
as
equals.
full as equal people.
Right.
We were still seen as, we were imposed upon with someone else's decisions to decide this is what we want to do, whatever the reason is that they wanted to do it, and we're going to do it. And quite frankly, the story may not be over, because the one wonderful thing I love about Black people is that we are resilient. We can take the worst possible situation, something even like that, and it's going to be a setback, of course, but still now you see, even with West Haven, it's a community. We still were able to make that into a community, you know, where we had cookouts and barbecues, and because I think that's just historically that's been our story. It starts in Africa, brought here in the transatlantic slave trade. It's called a trade, but I'd rather call it something else, because a trade indicates you get something and I'm getting something.
Right.
Well, what do we get?
Right.
Okay, so that's not really a
One-sided
trade.
yeah, it wasn't trade at all.
I forget, I made another word for it, but anyway.
I think it's
just
called
like-
kidnapping.
Yeah, I like that.
Is that better? It's kidnapping.
Yeah, so, but we have,
Commodity, I think.
we are able to keep commodity,
That's
right?
the word.
Keep and reinventing ourselves.
Right.
That's what we've had to do as a people to survive. And so that's what I think about that whole thing, like the way, and this is not only just happened in Charlottesville, of course, you know, something like that happened. I want to say it was another in many places.
You name it, Minnesota, because I was.
Yeah, places just burned down,
Yeah,
level, and
yeah.
Blacks ran out of town.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we still, we're resilient, and we come back in any way that we can, because you know what I think that means? We don't have the material, the attachment to the material things as much. I'm not saying it's not important, don't
Sure.
anybody get that, but there has to be a reason why we're able to keep smiling and keep our heart open even to the very people who have done these assaults. I don't know many people that have as much compassion as a people as Black folk do. And sometimes I've heard people say, well, I couldn't be that forgiving, even with the massacre that took place in South Carolina at the church a few years back. I've heard people say, well, how could they forgive? You know, I couldn't. But that's what I mean. Mm-hmm. It's something that is in our at a cellular level that causes us to be able to really. It's okay. I mean, people make big mistakes, but you know what? We still love them because we're all God's children. That kind of thing.
What do you think?
Well, I think about what I'm just going to not take away. She said it right, you know, on point. And I think about, I don't understand with hidden history and with all of the effort to suppress our history. And then when you do have people who are really just phenomenal, like Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali. Oh, now he's this great man, and they wait till, or Nelson Mandela. Oh, they wait till they're senile or sick or old, and then you get all these accolades. You're so wonderful. Then you're no threat to me. And then I just can name them all. The Tuskegee Airmen. Yeah. They weren't recognized. My aunt, the Broly nurses, just after 55 years. I'd just now be considered a University of Virginia alum.
Right, by UVA.
By UVA.
Yeah.
They had some ceremony, I think, back in April, and I just saw her in one of the Virginia. And I said, now she's 94 years old. Well, thank you, Miss Maud.
Yeah.
Just, it's amazing that we for some reason, are not even given permission to be our God-given, talented, and gifted selves. And that's the thing that kind of blows me away. I don't know how to reconcile that. There's so much reconciliation within our community, but within ourselves that we have to really, I don't want to always ask, like I said, when I was a kid, I never understood. Why would I have to ask for permission to go to Belmont? So to me, that's a hard, very difficult thing for me to process, for me to fathom, because I'm a human being first, and it becomes about human dignity and respect. How are we gonna get to this word called unity? We're always talking about unity when who's going to be invited to the table? Well, some of the same people, or are we still going to exclude or not make non-inclusive the same people over and over again, because who's driving the unity narrative?
Right.
I just, I'm a little baffled by that, and I'm hoping we can do some things to change that.
How did the literary collective of Black women conversate or brainstorm or analyze August 11th and 12th and what transpired? I know the collective has come together post August 12th, so after A11 and A12. I'm sure this is a topic that has come up with the group. Throw this out, and we'll close with this topic. We have, and we bring this topic up a lot with our guests, whether it's Latin guests, white guests, African American guests. It's something that's forever going to be part of Charlottesville. So we ask about something that's forever going to be part of Charlottesville. Some of our guests say the statues need to go to museums. They're better off in museums where they can commemorate history, not in public parks. Some of our guests say leave the statues up because you can't change history. Some of our guests say right next to Robert A. Lee, there should be a statue of an African-American male or female that is championed and pedestaled and spotlighted just like Robert A. Lee, and they should counterbalance each other. So there's so many different, another school of thought is the whole concept was a manifestation and a strategy by a local politician to build a personal political brand to potentially build a political career, okay? And that's something that's, brainstorm and discuss. What comes up in conversation about A11, A12, before, during, after, and how the community can respond?
Yeah, definitely. One thing that comes up is seeing, regarding August 11th, when white nationalists took to the lawn. That was, again, it was surreal. People are saying, literally, they felt like it was a deluge of thousands or hundreds of Klansmen. Mm-hmm. So it was like it really took people back to the days of Jim Crow, just to think, and that this should never have occurred on UVA campus. How was that approved to have even we can break it down further. It was dangerous. Lit torches, and you're running across campus with lit torches. Students are around, buildings are around, but that was allowed is mind-boggling to me. And we have talked about that. We've talked about, again, I was not the only one to say they felt Charlottesville was ripe for this to happen. And then then the question comes, how do we all come together to try to prevent anything ever from happening like that again here? Because in the end of the day, I love Charlottesville. It's home. The area in general is home. And there's so much potential here, and there are so many good people here. I have to just throw this out right now. The wonderful women at the Women's Initiative, they have been a godsend for this project to me. They're my fiscal sponsor, and they have gone to great lengths to do everything for us, from handling any, financial stuff to actually giving us, for free of charge, a place to meet when we've needed it.
Nice.
So what I'm saying is they are wonderful and good people doing good work here. And it's unfortunate that something that terrible attack on Charlottesville of August 11th and 12th it kind of, now that's unfortunately what Charlottesville is known for. Before you can go further, that's the first thing people think. So I think we're all in a unique position to start to really work together more to bring these like brainstorming organizations like this one together with others.
Yeah.
And talk about how we can make this curriculum thing, for example, happen. How can we make this history get into the history books so children can start to understand and know who they are in a larger picture, from day one. Yep.
I love it. What are your thoughts on the topic?
I think for me, it's a breeding ground for repair and reparations. And I've been thinking about this a lot this summer. I've been
Me too.
in the grant writing mode myself, and I just thought about that. I've been thinking about this, I guess, for the last 2 or 3 months, in a more intense fashion, that we need to work with our lawmakers, on the local level, as well as Representative Sheila Jackson and other people in the arts, because I think this is a great place to understand what reparations can really do. I think we are at a new frontier. This is a different frontier. We talk about the green initiatives and things like that. There are things that we can try to think about doing, and it doesn't always have to be financial, yes, but there are other things we can do. I think about even our insurance companies that took advantage of our relatives and generations of people. Why not think about doing things like having great discounts for life insurance? A lot of us probably would like to have life insurance as we age, and a good life insurance policy. And I think knowing that our relatives were taken advantage of as being seen as property, I think that's a great place to start. Just, maybe it's a win-win. We're paying something, but some type of reparation that would say, that we can help you for next generations and next generations of people to get ahead. And, I just think it's a great place to heal and do some bold and take some risk to do something different. Not just to say, safeguards and, we'll just go back and I guess we'll just have a meeting and we'll just talk about what we talked about in 1920 or in the 20s when at the Harlem Renaissance. It's good to have that history to fall back on, to use as a segue to repair these breaches of human atrocities. I think that I would like to start with thinking about take the broken and seeing how we can mend the pieces and fit the pieces back together and work as a collective community and collaborate on that.
You guys did amazing today. We filled 65 minutes. Yes,
Can
please.
we get a plug in for our
Please.
production this weekend?
Please.
So we're about 9 months into this project, so it's a year long. And so we're having a commemoration live production this Saturday at 5:00 p.m. at the Belmont Arts Center Theater. So Diane, myself, all the ladies that's in this group, we're going to be doing monologues. We're going to be different people that we've met in these books. Some of us may be one of these women here, Mary McLeod Bethune, for example. Somebody will be Lucy Craft Laney.
Nice.
Someone's going to be Anna Mary Douglas, Frederick Douglass's wife, who many have never heard of.
That's a great idea.
And we're going to have drumming, and there's going to be dancing. So there are going to be moments when we're somber, but there are going to be moments when we are elated and celebrating. And this is our gift to Charlottesville.
Yes.
It's also a time when we could just be. It's a time for education. It's going to be a little class, a way to meet some of these people that otherwise people may never have heard about. So the kids can come. We're excited about it, and we're looking forward. We've worked really hard, and one of the members of the group, in fact, put this together. She really wanted, when I said something about wanting to do a closing, she stepped up and said, in private time, she asked me, well, can I do that? And she just ran with it. So please come out and get your, I'm not sure if there are any, I know we'll be selling tickets at the door, admission at the door, and it's only $10 or whatever you can. If you can't pay anything, that's fine too.
Okay, one more time on the dates and the place.
It's on this Saturday, September the 14th, at the Belmont Arts Collaborative Theater, and that's at 221 Carlton Road in Charlottesville.
7 p.m.
7
No, 5 to 7. 5 to 7.
5 to 7?
Yeah, it
7
starts
p.m.
at 5.
You're telling. Oh, I see. I didn't know that. I would have missed the whole thing.
Now you're going to be there 5 to 7.
And I probably knew. There's so much coming
You
at
would have
us.
been there. You would have been there. You guys did so well. We filled 75 minutes today on the show.
Wow.
I'm going to close on a couple things here. I thought Diane and Vivian were fantastic on today's program. Angelique Hawkins Jenkins is going to join us tomorrow. She's the entrepreneur and businesswoman behind Angelique's Mobile Kitchen. It is a food truck and trailer on Pantops, right there by Freebridge. She's also opening a brick and mortar restaurant and Dairy
That's
Market
exciting.
and Dairy Central. So we're going to spotlight Angelique and her evolution as an entrepreneur. A couple things I want to get off my chest before we wrap the program. I think Charlottesville and what we try to do with this platform is to make Charlottesville better than when we first arrived here. We're social entrepreneurs. You can run a business that's in the black and that's making money, but doing it in a way where you're going to leave the community in a better place than when you first arrived. It's called conscious capitalism or social entrepreneurship. So what we're trying to do with this show, and it requires a lot of resources. I have one staffer that literally is looking at a computer the entire show. It requires a lot of my resources as well. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to have discussions that are in the long run going to better Charlottesville. In the short term, they may make you a little uncomfortable or a little uneasy. But that feeling of uncomfortableness or awkwardness is because you know we're discussing something that needs to be discussed, that has been swept under the rug for decades.
absolutely.
And because it's been swept under the rug, it's impacting a portion of our population that is unfairly suffering the consequences of it. And when you hear metrics and statistics like 42% of the African American population in Charlottesville doesn't feel welcomed or comfortable in the downtown mall, that should raise red flags for you. And when you hear metrics and statistics like, 10, 15 years ago, half the population in Charlottesville was black. Now it's 19%. So when the population is decreasing, you have to start asking, why do African Americans not feel welcome in the downtown mall? Why are they leaving the city of Charlottesville? Is Vinegar Hill happening again in 2019 by way of increased real estate taxes and gentrification and changing neighborhoods through legal ways? Because I'm very concerned it is happening. And when you raise taxes on a neighborhood, what's going to happen to the folks that are there on a set budget that might be up there kind of longer in age when you increase their taxes 30, 40, 50%? It's got to come from somewhere. And eventually those homes will be sold and the neighborhood's going to be gentrified and look completely different. And what we don't want, and I'm going to close with this, I'm a father of an 18-month-old. What we do not want is a homogeneous, very plain, very a town or community that looks exactly the same. I want my son to grow up in a diverse, eclectic Charlottesville that has perspectives and viewpoints from all walks of life, all races in life, all socioeconomic backgrounds in life. Because then my son and my family is going to have a more open-minded mindset and mentality where he then can make decisions based on what he comes across that's diverse, as opposed to what I think Charlottesville's turning into. And I honestly think Charlottesville, if we're not careful, is going to turn into a playground of white, wealthy people. You look at the cost of real estate, you look at the jobs. 72% of Charlottesville employees cannot live in the city of Charlottesville.
That's crazy.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
3/4 of Charlottesville city employees can't afford to live in city limits.
That's right.
That's crazy. Okay? So let's stay on top of this. We'll close on this. We have to be mindful of increased real estate taxes, of gentrification, and we have to be advocates of folks that don't have a voice, because that's going to make a better future and community for our children.
Absolutely.
Great show. We'll archive the entire show on ilovecville.com. We'll take the audio of the show and turn it into an iTunes podcast. We will syndicate Diane and Vivian's appearance on the program for 30 days after today's show across the I Love CVille network, which reaches a little over 250,000 people a month. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your afternoon.
So what can I do if I would like to Thank you. Somehow, I'm just really not. I have that Facebook is like a dead.
You want to see it outside Facebook?
Yeah, but
I love CVille.com.